The Heat staged an incredible comeback of their own after blowing a big lead versus Orlando just days ago, capped by an amazing game winner shot by Tyler Herro. Is this a turning point of the season? We'll answer that on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Jam-packed show for you guys today. The Heat beat the Magic in an ugly game, filled with turnovers and a Tyler Herro game winner. But first, a lot has happened since our last show, David. Recording this after the Heat beat the Magic on Thursday night, and in the afternoon, Pat Riley released a statement in response to the recent reporting around the Jimmy Butler situation. And he said, we usually don't comment on rumors, but all this speculation has become a distraction to the team and is not fair to the players and the coaches. Therefore, we will make it clear. We are not trading Jimmy Butler. Look, I do think that this Jimmy stuff has been obviously distracting. You read some of the quotes coming out of shoot around in Orlando, the players being asked about it. Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo, Erik Spoelstra was being asked about it. Spo basically said very little and kind of shut down that conversation with reporters. Tyler Herro said, look, we're just worried about what's on the floor and what we can control. Bam kind of saying the same thing. No real surprises there, but they did have to answer questions about this. And I think the distracting part of it was a factor at the early part of this Orlando Magic game. You know, they had 5 turnovers in the first 4 minutes. They were down 14-0. They didn't score their first field goal until the 7-minute mark of the first quarter, and they just did look a little out of sorts. So how much of that was, I don't know, post-Christmas blues or the Jimmy Butler distractions or just the fact that shot? I don't know, but I just know watching it, it did feel at least that it was a distraction. We're going to talk a lot more about the game and just sort of how it played out. But going back to the statement itself, this statement worries me as a Heat fan. If the front office really thinks that by simply releasing a statement is enough to end the speculation and this distraction, then it proves that this organization is as behind on the times as some fans have feared. Like, if you really think a press release is going to stop First Take from debating the best Jimmy Butler trade destinations, if you think that just releasing a statement in an email and in a tweet is going to stop fans from speculating, like, as long as this situation remains unresolved, meaning until we know where Jimmy Butler's next contract is coming from, people are going to speculate about this. And reporters are going to keep reporting about this because it is unresolved. It is not rumors. This is reporting. And Pat Riley uses that term rumors. And it's like, it's not a rumor that Jimmy Butler doesn't know where his next contract is. This does, and the reason why I would be worried and why I am worried is this does not come off the way that I think The Godfather thinks it comes off. This isn't dropping the rings on the table. David, to me, this is actually embarrassing. And it shows that this team just isn't with it in 2024. This front office is a little bit behind the times because this stuff does not work anymore. The toothpaste on this is out of the tube, and a press release, a tweet, that doesn't put it back in the tube. This is embarrassing.
That's a little strong. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that necessarily as far as embarrassment is concerned. I could see Riley and the front office's perspective. One, they still think maybe not that there's rumors about it, that there is certainly conversations being had, and that Bernie is doing his job as Jimmy's agent to try and stir the pot as much as possible, that Shams Charania, as a reporter, is digging into this, getting probably information from Bernie Lee himself. And I think Riley was responding more than anything else because Spo was just like, oh, they kept asking me about it. and the players were talking about it, and they were being asked about it. And look, as well they should. Like that, we weren't in Orlando to cover the game, but we would have asked about it too. Like if we had a one-on-one with a player, we would have been like, oh, what's going on with this Jimmy situation? We would have asked. And so it's just a natural progression to want to know what's the team is thinking after this news comes up. Like the Heat have not been in the news for anything other than Pat Riley telling Jimmy to shut the hell up. and then Jimmy Butler perhaps requesting a trade, which is what the reporting is leaking about. And so from Riley's perspective, he's like, oh, all right, this is enough. Like, let's put the kibosh on this. Let's put
but he doesn't know that this doesn't work. How does he not? How is this going to work?
I think he's trying to mitigate it. I think people are going to still jabber and people are still going to occasionally ask, but I think it let's say the beat reporters know, let's not ask about it as much because there's nothing new to ask. And if ESPN's going to comment and ESPN's going to talk about it, well, that's up to ESPN. He can't control that, nor does he want to, but he wants to just assure fans. And from a business perspective, he wants to assure season ticket holders that Jimmy Butler will remain in a Heat uniform. So I think there's that kind of double meaning to it and an understanding, I should say, that he's trying to stop things from getting worse and worse and worse. I also think, though, and this is something I texted you, like it doesn't mean anything necessarily because we've seen front office personnel say, no, there's no way we're trading this. There's no way we're entertaining offers. We're not taking calls. And then sure enough, a week, 2 weeks pass and said player is traded. Like this doesn't necessarily mean or reflect what the front office actually entertains or is thinking of doing.
Right.
He might wind up trading him. And my perspective was, well, that's kind of a bad look for Riley then. Just to go out and make a statement this strictly and formally and say, we're not trading him. If you have to walk it back, and we talked about this in the earlier episode when we first heard the latest reporting regarding Jimmy, we think that there's a very likely chance of them trading him. That kind of leaves you looking a little foolish with egg on your face. And I don't know how you can clean up that act. And for a franchise that has done such an admirable job and thoughtful and purposeful job of trying to clean up their image around the league. Look, they may have botched things with LeBron in 2014. They certainly botched things with Dwayne in 2016. To some extent, they may even botch things with Chris Bosh
at the end there.
To retirement. You can make an argument that they were trying to save his life, but it didn't look good. The franchise was flux as far as league-wide perception was concerned, and from their fans, and they were struggling and they were mediocre for a number of years until Dwayne came back, until Jimmy eventually signed in 2019, and then was able to carry them to great heights. But to take your franchise's best player and to perhaps treat him badly, and I think there's a lot of people who think that
they have. I mean, for Pat Riley to say what he said in the press conference, in the end of season press conference, that bothered Jimmy Butler, and it should have bothered Jimmy Butler. That was aggressive. That was really aggressive and a little uncalled for. Even like you could argue that Jimmy Butler shouldn't have said what he said about, if he's not available. We could agree with what Pat Riley said, but that's not really the point, right? And you go there, and the embarrassment of the franchise, the franchise player, the guy who brought you out of mediocrity, and you're just not even you're not even going to have a conversation with me about an extension. Like we're not even having the conversation, and you're telling me that through the media in your end of season press conference.
Right.
Like that does rub Jimmy Butler the wrong. Why wouldn't it? It would rub me the wrong way if all of a sudden David Locke was just like, hey, by the way, Wes, we're not extending you. Like you're just and he's saying that on Locked On Jazz, and that's how I have to hear about it. I wouldn't appreciate that. And so that's the part of all of this that I get both sides where they're coming from. Like I don't but Pat Riley, I again, like you said, he can back off of this. Just because you tweet this, because you say this, doesn't mean you can't. There's no rule that says I can't trade Jimmy Butler anymore if you're Pat Riley. So my question is, why even do it? Like, what is this? This to me is just like, okay, boomer, like cool tweet. Like I'm glad you can. I'm glad you found out how to use your iPhone. Like to me, there's no reason for this statement, and that's the part that's so obvious about it. And the fact that they went ahead and did it feels like it's sort of last minute damage cleanup.
Yeah, but
also just sort of you're not really reading the room in 2024. Like this doesn't do anything. And at the best case scenario, nothing. Worst case scenario, to your point, you look foolish if you do trade him in February or before February.
This is if you've got the guts 10 years later. Like,
Right.
that was probably looking back a foolish statement from Riley because it kind of put pressure, and LeBron was like, I got the guts. Not only that, I'm the number one player in the league. I can do whatever I want. And, there were some missteps there. And we've heard some rumblings about, Riley indicating that LeBron and his wife were expecting another child, that he shouldn't have mentioned it publicly. And so, to your point, like, it's a great one. I don't even think that we discussed this. Like, this could have probably all been swept. Like, in the challenge to Jimmy Butler at the end of last season press conference, when he said, shut the hell up, that probably could have been resolved with a phone call. Like, I know Riley's perspective was, you shouldn't have said that you could have beat that team if you had been out there, because that's disrespectful to your teammates that were out there competing and you weren't because you were hurt. So you should shut the hell up. That's something that he should have told Jimmy directly and personally, especially knowing that Jimmy was going through a traumatic issue of his own, dealing with the loss of his father. He could have called him and said, look, you shouldn't have done that. That makes Bam look bad. That makes Tyler look bad, etc.
Makes your teammates
Go
look
apologize to your teammates.
Yeah.
A phone call like that probably goes a lot better towards salvaging this relationship. Instead, it seems like it's just been slowly degrading over the last 6 months.
And for him to go out and say rumors in this statement is, again, just like, everybody, people took this as like, oh, see, he got you, Shams. Like, this was not a statement versus Shams or ESPN or any of. I don't know why Shams is the only. Like, other people have reported on. Brian Windhorst has reported on this. Mark Stein has reported on this. Sam Amick has reported on this. Like, there's been a lot of reporters on this. Local beat, Barry Jackson, Anthony Chang, Ira Winderman. Like, everybody's reporting on this. But this was not a statement to the media. This was a statement to Jimmy Butler. This was a statement saying, if you're going to leak what you want, in essence, a trade, then okay, we don't leak stuff. We email. We still have our AOL email address, and this is what we're doing. So and that's how they responded to it. And my point is, like, that's not how the game's played in 2024 anymore. This is not how it's played.
Does this force Jimmy's hand to make much more public trade requests then, and kind of make him look like the bad guy in all this? Is that basically what
he did not want to do?
Right.
This is a challenge.
I said I wasn't going to trade him, but Jimmy just made things untenable. Like, he just made things increasingly more difficult. And at some point we had to accommodate him because the players on this roster deserve better. And that's
maybe I am being unfair. Maybe this is a chess, not checkers, and this is Pat Riley kind of moving the pawn and up
possible
2 spots, knowing that he has to sacrifice it, but knowing that he's going to put Jimmy in a precarious spot. And this is like, all right, we're not going to do it your way, but if you want out, you are going to look like the bad guy, not me.
I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more about, like, Jimmy behind the scenes over the last few seasons and the things that he's done that maybe have pissed off some members of the front office. And that seems like that's probably the next step. It's an ugly situation.
It's how other organizations would do it, right? Like, they would do the leak through the media stuff, but that's not what this team does, or hasn't, at least to this point.
Yeah.
All right. The Heat won the game despite all of this stuff happening, and it was actually pretty remarkable. We'll talk about what the win means for the Miami Heat, for the players that are out there on the court. Tyler Herro had the most important shot of the game. I don't know if he's going to be the recipient of the most credit cookies. That's up to David. We're going to hand out credit cookies after this on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. And now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. And for product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change, and gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. A reminder that your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Well, David, it's another Miami Heat win, which means it's time for the tastiest Locked On Heat segment. It is time for Credit Cookies.
Cookie gang, cookie gang, cookie gang, cookie gang. Stack them high like a cookie chain. Sharing with friends, spreading the fame.
I think this was a return of a return of Westradamus here, because you accurately predicted that Tyler would not be the lead cookie getter in today's segment, and that's impressive.
Thank you.
I think that's a pretty good call. Look, Tyler gets 2 credit cookies today, and I think that's fair considering that he struggled for most of the night. He was not impactful the way he was in the last game, where despite they won, but he didn't perform well offensively, but he was able to contribute in many other ways. And again, almost near a triple double with just 1 assist shy of that. Just 8 of 17 from the floor, 3 of 6 from 3-point range. Wasn't able to get to the line. Look, credit to Jalen Suggs, credit to Anthony Black, credit to everybody that was out there. Queen, I think his name was, defending him at a high level. They kept Tyler from getting comfortable, and there were a number of shots that he probably could have hit and did not. So he gets 2 credit cookies, but he hit the game winner, and that was a hell of a shot from Tyler. Like, there were some bad passes.
Didn't we have a rule where a game winner? We came up with this last year, like a game winner is worth like 1 cookie, like right off the bat or something. We had something like this.
It's possible, and that's why he gets 2. And I think that's it. Like, it was
that's
a tough shot. It was, I wanted to give him 3, and I debated it. I was like, no, I can't. He was off all night. Like, the fact that he hit the game winner is impressive, but you have to look at the width and breadth of this game. And so that's why he only gets the 2.
Okay.
And that's
so
fine.
all right, let's do it a little different here, because I want to spend a little bit more time on the game winner. And I think we can actually debate this, because I think this is interesting. Just give me, so you've got 8 other cookies remaining. Just give me the list, and then we'll talk reasons after that.
Niko Jovic gets 1 because he had an impressive showing before being taken out of the game with an ankle injury. Jaime Jaquez was phenomenal. He gets 2. Terry Rozier was a hell of a spark off the bench. He gets 2 as well. I've got 3 credit cookies to Alec Burks, because that guy was on fire. Not only was he getting to the line, he was hitting his shots, 3 of 3 from 3-point range. He was the offensive spark that Miami needed, because they weren't getting that steady offense from anybody else except for Alec Burks. And so I'm a little surprised he didn't get the game-winning shot opportunity, because I feel pretty confident in saying he would have hit it tonight. But he gets 3 credit cookies because I think he was the more impactful player over the totality of today's game.
I think I have no problem with Alec Burks getting 3 of the credit cookies. I do think maybe we take 1 from Terry Rozier. He was kind of a mess defensively. Offensively, there was a spark in the first half, but Nico was that spark in the first half too, and he only got 1. I know he left early, but it wasn't that much different in terms of playing time. Can we just give 1 to Terry and give 3 to Tyler? Tyler was the leading scorer on the night. Like, it wasn't just the game winner. He came in with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter and just made a bucket right away, and had I forget, what was it, 6 points in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, that's fair. We can do that. Like, that's fine.
Great. So still won the prediction there, because he didn't have the most credit cookies, but he also
tied for the most.
Tied Alec Burks. So that final mid-range shot that Tyler Herro made for the game winner, I love that. Like, I love that Tyler Herro is basically not taking mid-range shots. So I am kind of going back on everything I've ever said about Tyler Herro in terms of, like, hey, if this guy is just catching and shooting, and you give him a Klay Thompson, Steph Curry shot profile, I think this guy could be an all-star, and that is exactly what is happening this year. And I love the 3-point. That pull-up 3 that he made with a couple minutes left in the game was huge for Miami in this game. But on the final play, for people that are complaining, hey, the league is just a 3-point shooting contest, all this stuff, this is where the mid-range shot still lives. And this is why, if you're a star like Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, like all these guys, they get to take these mid-range shots, especially at the end of these games. Tyler Herro getting a play drawn up for him, essentially to take that mid-range shot, because that when he comes off of that pin down screen that I think it was Alec Burks setting, like that isn't high up on the floor enough where you think, yeah, he's going to go all the way up around the arc. Like, that is designed to kind of get into a sweet spot, strong right hand, hit that elbow jumper, boom. I love that they drew it up that way for their star player, their best offensive player of the year so far in Tyler Herro, and that he hit it with such confidence. Like, that was That was an all-star shot. And with all-star voting opening up, I love that the Miami Heat's Twitter account was also like, vote here. Here's the highlight. Here's the link. Vote for this guy. That was an all-star moment.
I think he could have taken a 3-point shot. Like if you see, they went under the screen. It was a good screen, and he had enough space there where he was pretty wide open. But he said, you know what? I might have a lane if I can continue to cut in there. And he did. He got to the strong hand, as you said, was able to pull up. It was highly contested too. Like there was just enough time. By the time he got to his spot there from about 18, 19 feet off, like they were able to close out in that shot. I can't recall exactly. I think it was Queen who was on him at that point in time, and he was able to close that gap pretty well.
I bet you
And
Tyler
he had
didn't
a
even
hand
see
up.
him though. Like when you're in that zone, when you get to that spot,
you could see that on the dribble. Like he's got it. He's like, all right, I'm taking this. He knew it. And this is the years of training with his trainer, all the times that we take those shots for granted, that we see him practice this over the summer and make jokes about muscle hero and everything else like that. This is coming in where he takes those screens and he comes off that curl knowing he's going to take it. And he looked, when that dribble was in his hand, he was like, all right, this is my shot and I'm getting to it. And he was going to take it regardless. And that was pretty impressive. And he knew exactly where he wanted to. And he pulled up at just the right spot with a half second left. It's a pretty badass moment from Tyler. Great shot. Very impressive. Nothing but net. Confident. He's always, confident when that shot is taken. But at the same time, despite his struggles throughout the game, to be able to pull up like that was an all-star. And I think he does deserve that kind of consideration when he hits those kinds of shots, because it's not like he's been without these kinds of moments throughout the season. And so to see him be able to do this in a game-winning situation, down 17, kudos to him.
Another big moment that happened at the end of this game. We technically, for the first time ever, saw Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo on the court together. Now, it was just on the final inbound. Khalil Ware was guarding the inbounder. It wasn't like a real possession. It was Jalen Suggs kind of heaving up a last minute. He didn't get it off in time, even though it did kind of look like it did live. And then, it almost went in, and it was a little scary there. But it has me thinking. Like, there was a moment right before that final play with Khalil Ware on the inbounder where I thought he probably should have been in the game sooner. And I do wonder if Erik Spoelstra goes back to the film and he kind of is reevaluating his decisions at the end of this game, if he agrees with me. We'll talk about that exact possession. We'll talk about maybe if there's a possibility and an avenue here for Spo to play Bam and Khalil Ware together more often. We'll talk about that and get to some more listener questions after this here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. It's so easy to bet on which players will score a touchdown or maybe how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. It's a lot of fun, especially when you win, but you can only win when you visit FanDuel.com and join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. It's time to get to some of our listener questions. Thanks to everybody that's part of the Locked On Heat Insider community. You can sign up with the link in the show notes. It's free for 14 days, $4.99 a month. After that, now's the perfect time to sign up, because not only do you get first dibs at asking questions for our post-game shows, but also you get first look at all of our reporting on the Jimmy Butler situation, anything that comes out from the national outlets as well. And we have our commentary on that too. So we had a bunch of stuff that we were sharing in the subtext community today with that. So if you don't want to miss anything on Jimmy Butler, make sure you sign up. Now's the perfect time. Free for 14 days. You can cancel at any time. No sweat after that. But let's get to something. Before we get to the questions, I do have a question for you. And it goes back to what I was teasing us about. The Heat had Ware on the inbounder on that final possession. I think he probably should have been in one defensive possession earlier. The prior one where Goga Bitadze beat Bam Adebayo for that tip-in that set up that need for Tyler Herro to hit the go-ahead jumper, the game-winning mid-range jumper that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I know, like, this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking either. Like, Bam was getting beat by Goga all night long, and I'm like, yeah, like, you've been daring them to shoot threes the entire game. They haven't been able to do it. They shot like 15% from 3-point range in this game. Like, you're playing a lot of zone. You're only up whatever, like 1 point at that stage. Like, why not have that other big man in there to guard from literally what happened? I just, I know that Erik Spoelstra, it would have been like kind of ballsy to go to the rookie in that moment. Like, it really would have been a tough decision to do that. But I didn't think that the other guys that were out there all were necessarily playing great. I didn't think Terry Rozier was the right guy to have in on that final defensive possession. Like, why not play Kel'el Ware at that moment?
Yeah, I mean, even to go back even a smidge further, like that Alec Burks turnover that led to the Bataza tip-in, he gets called for a foul there. I texted you. I don't know why Erik Spoelstra didn't challenge that, because it looked like, and John Crotty pointed this out in the broadcast, it looked like Burks was shoved out of bounds. And yeah, I know he looked like maybe Burks was kind of pushing off or something like that, but he also looked like he was falling out of bounds because of contact from an Orlando Magic player. And Spo didn't even bother to challenge it. It's like, you've got 20 seconds left in the game. Like, what are you saving them for? This is the time to do it. It could cost you, nothing, and it could get you possession of the game. And again, you're up one.
It's almost like a principle thing where he doesn't want to slow the game down anymore.
No, we've talked about it. Yeah, it's bizarre. So there was a stoppage in play there, right? I mean, that's when he could have brought
brief stoppage. Yeah, and then you would have brought in Kel'el. Yeah.
So it's a good point. Does Bataze get that rebound? Instead, he's being challenged by, there was a defensive possession before that they tried to stop. I can't recall who took that shot beforehand that Bataze wound up tipping in. It might have been Burks. I mean, that might have been, Suggs, who took a shot, and then, or was it Anthony Black? I can't recall. Whoever it was who took this shot beforehand that led to the tip in. Like, Alec Burks was the one who was challenging Goga on that rebound. He shouldn't have been in on it. And I know Bataze was credited with the basket, but it almost looked like Burks might have accidentally or inadvertently tipped it in himself. But maybe that's what the thought process was. Like, you're going to have to stop these guys from trying to shoot on the perimeter, despite the fact that they were 4 of 21 on the.
That's the thing. It's night. This whole game was begging Kel'el Ware and Bam at it. Like, if there was going to be a time where we got an extended run of Bam and Ware together, it felt like this game, because Spo was kind of searching. Alec Burks gave him some good minutes, but as soon as Nico went down, he was sort of searching for that fifth guy in his lineups, basically until the game was over. And I was like, why not give Kel'el Ware a shot? So I do think that coming away from this game, maybe Spo looks at this, because he looks at the film, but he also reviews his own decisions too. And I'm wondering if he looks at this and says, maybe if I had Ware in there, because who knows, maybe he thought about it, but ultimately decided not to do it, Right. And he's like, if I had Ware in there, maybe Goga doesn't get that. Maybe it's time to start experimenting with this, because he's played really well these last couple of games. But let's get to some of the questions from the Locked On Heat Insider community. Again, thanks to everybody who sent in these questions. First one comes from Malachi, who writes in, turnovers have killed us the last couple of games. Should this be concerning? The Heat had 20 turnovers in this one. Are you concerned?
A little bit. I think it just goes to it speaks to where the team is at mentally right now. Like, we talked about the distraction aspect of it, and certainly they had a number of turnovers to start the game. They looked really shaky, not kind of fluid, and maybe that's more to the fact that Jimmy isn't in that starting lineup, and obviously he drives a lot of what they're able to do, and he's pretty efficient overall. And
rarely turns it over.
Yeah, rarely. So I think that's probably it. I don't, they had 10 in the first half, 6 in the first quarter, 4 in the second quarter, then 4 in the third quarter, and 6 in the fourth. So there was a pretty even distribution. Towards the end of the game, there was just some bad passes, maybe as they were making this incredible comeback, that they probably could have been a little bit more, I don't know, responsible with their ball handling and not necessarily give the ball up as easily as they did. But I don't know. I'm not quite concerned yet, but at the same time, it's something to monitor if we're a couple games more and Jimmy does not return to the lineup, or if there continue to be rumors or reports swirling about his status with the team. Then yeah, I think it does speak to that. Like, I mean, we kind of hinted at it in terms of the reporting hanging over this team, and I think it's something to consider. It's like, they're players; they don't want to deal with this. They don't want to deal with these distractions. Like, they tried to put a stop to it. The front office tried to put a stop to it. But it's not really going to change anything. They're going to go and travel on the road, and they're going to be asked about.
Well, not just asked, like not just like the outside noise, but like the internal, like, what's going on with Jimmy Butler, right? Because they're aware of the situation, just like they're all smart. Right. Like, all these guys deal with their own contracts. They know that Jimmy Butler is dealing with a contract dispute right now too. They've got to wonder, hey, is our star player coming back or not? Like, What are we doing here? And I think
And
that
just
weighs heavily on the team too.
to clarify, though, there's no tension. Like a player seeking a contract is never a source of tension because every player will say, no, he's got to get his. Like they
No.
don't have any problem with Jimmy wanting a max extension. They'd rather it get done, and whatever it gets done, they'll just accept it.
They would
way or
like,
the other.
one way or the other. They just want to know. I hope, they're not, nobody's upset with Jimmy Butler in that locker room. As far as we know, it doesn't seem like that.
Right.
It just, it is a thing that is hanging over. It's a giant question mark of, what's the rest of this season look like? Is Jimmy part of this or not? It has to be something that these guys are thinking about, even if they're not obviously going to say that to the media, nor should they. But in terms of the turnovers, this is less of a turnover problem to me and more of a symptom of a roster flaw. And that's the shortage of size, right? And I don't even, by the way, I don't know that I don't think that playing Bam and Kel'el Ware reduces the amount of turnovers. That's not really what I'm getting at here. It's just they're positionally kind of small across a lot of positions. Sure. And you think about the two teams that they just played in Brooklyn and Orlando, and Brooklyn's no good, but they're long, right? And Orlando obviously has a lot of guys out, but they're really long still across every spot. And there's just a lot of possessions where the Heat had the ball and like you just had a long limb just like kind of jumping into a passing lane or something like that. And it's just hard for these guys to see over these big bodies. And that's sort of what creates a lot of these turnovers. So
and
concern,
looking ahead,
I don't know. It's just, this is, again, it's a symptom of a roster flaw that they do need to figure out a way to solve.
Looking ahead, I don't think it's going to get any better. Like they play on Saturday in Atlanta, and that is a team that has a great defensive presence, and they've been much better defensively.
Over under
is going to make things.
I was just going to over under 5.5 steals for Dyson Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, if Tyler struggled tonight with Jalen Suggs and Anthony Blacks, I mean, that's not. It's not going to get any better when Daniels is trying to guard him and keep him from his spot. So it's going to be a tough matchup. So this is. And it's something that we haven't spoken about. Like Bam struggled today. And like if Bam wants to get off the schneid a little bit, like going up against Clint Capella, not as easy a challenge perhaps, but it's what he's going to have to rise up to. And maybe he's dealing with the whole Jimmy situation in a way that he's kind of internalizing it. And you hinted at maybe that he's looked a little sluggish, a little injured perhaps, because there were just a number of plays there where he was just not able to finish around the rim.
Yeah.
And those were shots that he normally would make. So it's not going to get any easier for him, but he has to rise to the challenge. Like if they trade Jimmy Butler, and it looks like that's probably, despite what Riley said, a possibility, then Bam has to say, okay, this is my team. I am the captain. I have to be the one that kind of provides.
As long as Jimmy's out with whatever injury this is too. Like he was out for this game, returning to conditioning to play. So that leads you to believe that he should be returning soon. That tends to be what it is. Obviously, TBD on all of this. We don't know until we know.
Flu.
Sure is. Last question here comes from Flavio. Only question that matters is who's in the market that best fits Tyler Herro's game. We're rebuilding around Tyler, David. I don't know who's best on the market. I don't want to do a whole trade machine bit here, but I do want to answer the question. And in terms of like prototype of player, I think you need a defensive-minded guard next to him in your backcourt of the future who can obviously also space the floor to a certain degree, because you just have to have guys.
Not Duncan Robinson, then, is what you're saying?
They've been great. Like, it wasn't the best Duncan Robinson game, but their net rating together has been awesome. If you can get Duncan Robinson with a little bit more like pep in his defensive step, that's sort of the ideal player, isn't it? Somebody with size. Duncan has size. Who can shoot the ball, but can probably somebody who can defend at a high level. And also maybe play make a little bit, because they probably just need one more perimeter playmaker, whether it's somewhere on the perimeter next to Tyler Herro. But yeah, that's sort of when you think about. That's a great. By the way, I just described kind of an all-star player, but that would be the ideal, right? That would
find somebody like that. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah.
Right. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.